The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, where the asphalt shimmered like water and the temperature gauge read 108 degrees. This is a story about kindness, deception, and the unexpected ways our past catches up with us. It's a story about two men whose lives collided on a scorching summer day in 2015, and how that collision would reshape everything they thought they knew about trust, family, and redemption. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world. And if you enjoy stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss what happens next. Now, let's dive into this incredible true story. The old Chevrolet sputtered one final time before dying completely on the shoulder of Route 60, just outside the small town of Apache Junction. Marcus Chen, 23 years old with grease permanently embedded under his fingernails, slammed his palm against the steering wheel in frustration. The ancient pickup truck had been his father's before cancer took him 2 years ago, and Marcus had kept it running through sheer determination and borrowed parts. But determination couldn't fix a blown transmission, and borrowed parts cost money he didn't have. He climbed out into the oppressive heat, his faded Phoenix Suns t-shirt already soaked with sweat. The highway stretched empty in both directions, a ribbon of black cutting through the tan desert landscape, dotted with saguaro cacti and tumbleweeds. His phone showed 1 bar of signal and 12% battery. The nearest mechanic shop was his own, 15 miles back in town, and calling a tow truck would cost at least $200 he couldn't spare. Marcus had opened Chen's Auto Repair 6 months ago in a cramped garage bay he rented from a sympathetic landlord who remembered his father. Business was slow. Apache Junction was a small town where people fixed their own vehicles or took them to the established shops that had been there for decades. Most days, Marcus survived on oil changes and tire rotations, barely making enough to cover rent for both the shop and the small apartment he shared with his younger sister, Lily. Lily was 19, smart as a whip, and had been accepted to Arizona State University on a partial scholarship. The partial part was the problem. They needed another $8,000 for her first year, and Marcus had been working double shifts, taking any job he could find, trying to scrape together enough to make her dreams possible. Their mother had left when Lily was 5, disappearing into a new life in California with a man she'd met online, sending birthday cards that became increasingly sporadic until they stopped altogether. Marcus checked his phone again, 11%. He was about to call his buddy Miguel when he heard the distinctive purr of an expensive engine approaching from the west. A silver Rolls-Royce Phantom emerged from the heat haze, sleek and incongruous against the desert backdrop. It slowed as it approached, then pulled smoothly onto the shoulder behind his dead pickup. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out who seemed equally out of place in this desolate stretch of Arizona highway. He was perhaps in his early 50s, wearing an immaculate cream-colored suit despite the heat, with kind eyes behind designer sunglasses and a neatly trimmed beard going gray at the edges. His appearance and the elegant way he moved suggested wealth, but it was the genuine concern in his expression that struck Marcus most. "Assalamu alaikum," the man said, his accent revealing Middle Eastern origins. "You appear to be in some difficulty, young man." Marcus wiped his greasy hands on his jeans. "Yeah, transmission's gone. I'm a mechanic, so I know it's dead. Just trying to figure out how to get it back to my shop." The man approached, looking at the old Chevrolet with an appraising eye. "A mechanic with a broken vehicle. That is like a doctor who cannot heal himself, yes?" His smile was warm, without mockery. "I am Khalid Al-Rashid. And you are?" "Marcus Chen. I appreciate you stopping, but I'll figure something out." Khalid removed his sunglasses, and Marcus noticed his eyes were a striking amber color, almost gold in the harsh sunlight. "I have some experience with being stranded far from help. When I was young, in Saudi Arabia, my father's car broke down in the desert. We waited 4 hours in heat much worse than this. A Bedouin man stopped and helped us, even though he had very little himself. My father never forgot that kindness." He gestured toward the Rolls-Royce. "I have a satellite phone in my car. Let me call a tow truck for you. Please, I insist." Something in Khalid's demeanor made it impossible to refuse. There was a gentleness there, a genuine desire to help that reminded Marcus of his father. While Khalid made the call, speaking in rapid Arabic that Marcus couldn't follow, Marcus noticed the interior of the Rolls-Royce through the open door. The leather seats looked softer than any bed he'd slept in. There was a laptop on the passenger seat, and what appeared to be architectural blueprints rolled up in the back. "The truck will be here in 30 minutes, Khalid announced, returning. "They will take your vehicle to wherever you specify, but 30 minutes in this heat is not pleasant. Please, sit in my car. The air conditioning is excellent, I assure you. They sat in the climate-controlled luxury of the Rolls-Royce, and Marcus felt the sweat on his skin begin to cool. Khalid offered him a bottle of water from a small refrigerator built into the center console, and Marcus drank it gratefully. "You said you're a mechanic?" Khalid asked. "Is business good in Apache Junction?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Not exactly. I opened my shop 6 months ago, but it's tough competing with the established places. Most days I'm lucky to break even." "Why did you become a mechanic?" "My dad. He worked on cars his whole life, taught me everything he knew. He died 2 years ago, and I guess I wanted to keep that part of him alive, you know?" Marcus paused, surprised at himself. He didn't usually open up to strangers. "I'm also trying to save money for my sister's college tuition. She's brilliant. Got into ASU, but we need more money to make it happen." Khalid listened with complete attention, the kind of listening that made you feel like your words mattered. "Your father would be proud of you, I think. Taking care of your sister, following his path. These are honorable things." "Honorable doesn't pay the bills," Marcus said, then immediately regretted the cynicism. "So he's legitimate." "That's where it gets weird. Everything exists, but it's all very clean. No speeding tickets, no credit card debt history before 2016. No social media presence before 7 years ago. For a guy who supposedly lived a whole life in California working for financial firms, there's almost no digital footprint until he shows up in Arizona. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "It could mean he's just a private person who paid cash and stayed off social media. Or it could mean someone very carefully built a backstory using a real person's identity documents." Janet paused. "Here's the thing that bugs me most. I found a David Michael Brennan who attended U of A and graduated in 2004, but that David Brennan also appears in a San Diego newspaper obituary from 2015. Died in a car accident. Survived by his parents, Robert and Linda Brennan." Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. "You're sure it's the same person?" "Birth date matches. Parents' names match what your guy claims. The original David Brennan died 8 years ago, and a few months later, someone using his identity shows up in Arizona with a perfectly constructed life story." "Jesus," Marcus breathed. "There's more. I looked into Michael Torres like you asked. Turns out Torres had a younger brother who died in his 20s. Guess what his name was?" Marcus already knew. David. David Anthony Torres. Different middle name, but close enough. If Michael Torres wanted to assume a new identity, using his dead brother's first name might be a psychological tell. People often can't completely abandon their past, even when they're trying to disappear. After thanking Janet and ending the call, Marcus sat in his truck outside his shop, trying to process what he'd learned. David Brennan was a stolen identity. The man he'd been having dinner with, playing golf with, considering a friend, was Michael Torres, a con artist who had defrauded Khalid Al-Rashid of $20 million and was now living a comfortable life built on lies and a dead man's name. Marcus felt betrayed, even though the friendship had been false from his side too. He'd been investigating Brennan from the start, never truly open or honest. But Brennan, or rather Torres, had been deceiving everyone for years. Everything about him was manufactured, from his divorce story to his grateful appreciation of Khalid's help. He called Layla. "You were right. Brennan is Torres. The real David Brennan died in 2015 and Torres stole his identity." Layla's sharp intake of breath was audible. "You're certain?" Marcus relayed everything Janet had found. When he finished, Layla was quiet for a long moment. "We need concrete proof for prosecution," she finally said. "Right now, we have circumstantial evidence. A good lawyer could argue coincidence or mistaken identity. We need something that directly ties the man calling himself David Brennan to Michael Torres. Like what? Fingerprints would be ideal, but we don't have Torres's prints on file. DNA would work if we had something to compare it to. Photographs from before he changed his appearance. Financial records that show movement of stolen money." Layla's voice hardened. "Or we need him to confess." "How am I supposed to get him to confess?" "By making him think he's won. By making him think you're someone he can use." Layla's plan was cold and calculated. "Tell him you need investment advice for a significant amount of money. Tell him your sister sold a biomedical patent for $3 million and needs help managing the windfall. Make yourself a target. Let him think he can con you the way he conned my father." "That's dangerous," Marcus said. "If he figures out I'm onto him, he won't. You've been playing the role of friend for weeks. He trusts you. And men like Torres can't resist an opportunity. His entire life is built on exploiting people's trust. If you dangle bait that's too good to resist, he'll take it." Marcus thought about the man he'd met. The warmth in his smile, the genuine seeming interest in Marcus's life. How much of Torres was sociopath, And how much was broken human being? Did it matter? If I do this, Marcus said slowly, and we get evidence, what happens to him? Prison, long sentence, restitution of whatever assets we can recover, justice. Layla's voice softened slightly. And my father gets to know that his instinct to help people wasn't wrong, that the person who betrayed him is being held accountable. Maybe that gives him back some of what Torres took. Marcus agreed, but as he hung up, he felt the weight of what he was about to do. He was going to deliberately deceive someone, trick them into revealing their true nature, even if that someone was a criminal who deserved it. The moral ambiguity made him uncomfortable, but he thought about Khalid stopping for a stranger in the desert, about genuine kindness being weaponized, and he steeled himself. The next step required Lily's involvement, which Marcus hated. He called her that evening and explained everything: the investigation, Torres' real identity, and what Layla was asking him to do. You want me to pretend I sold a patent for $3 million? Lily asked, incredulous. Marcus, this is insane. I know, but if we can get him to try to con us, if we can get evidence of him attempting fraud, he goes to prison for what he did to Khalid. Lily was quiet, thinking. Khalid Al-Rashid paid for my education. He's the reason I got to go to ASU, the reason I could focus on my studies instead of working 3 jobs. If this man really did steal from him, betray his trust like that, then yeah, I'll help. But you have to promise me this is safe. Layla's team will be monitoring everything. If Torres tries anything, we shut it down immediately. Okay, Lily said. Let's get this bastard. 2 days later, Marcus met Brennan for lunch at their usual spot, a gastropub in Old Town Scottsdale. He waited until they'd ordered before dropping the news with carefully practiced excitement. My sister just sold her first patent, Marcus said. Some medical device she developed in grad school. The company bought it for $3 million. Brennan's eyes widened. Marcus, that's incredible. You must be so proud. I am. But honestly, we're both kind of freaking out. Neither of us has ever dealt with that kind of money. Lily's smart with science, but investment and tax strategy? We're completely lost. Marcus watched Brennan carefully. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. A calculation. Before the warm smile returned. Well, you came to the right person. Managing sudden wealth requires careful planning. There are tax implications, investment strategies, estate planning considerations. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Lily and I talked, and we'd like to hire you officially. Help us figure out how to handle this windfall properly. I'd be honored, Brennan said. When can the 3 of us meet to discuss her goals and timeline? They set a meeting for the following week. Marcus texted Layla after lunch. Hook set. He took the bait. Layla's response was immediate. Good. We'll have our team in place. Keep him confident and comfortable. The meeting took place at Brennan's office, the same corner room where Marcus had first met him months ago. Lily played her part perfectly, nervous and excited in equal measure, talking about her research and her dreams of funding her own lab someday. Brennan listened with apparent genuine interest, asking smart questions that showed real knowledge of both finance and biomedical engineering. The key is preserving the principal while generating steady growth, Brennan explained, walking them through various investment strategies. I typically recommend a diversified portfolio with a mix of stocks, bonds, and alternative investments. For someone your age, Lily, we can afford to be moderately aggressive while still maintaining safety. It all sounded perfectly legitimate. If Marcus hadn't known the truth, he would have thought Brennan was exactly what he appeared to be. A competent financial advisor trying to help a client. There is one strategy I usually reserve for my most trusted clients, Brennan said, leaning forward conspiratorially. A private investment fund I manage personally. It's not advertised publicly, but it consistently returns 15 to 20% annually. Much better than traditional investments. There it was, the hook. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Why isn't it public? Lily asked, playing skeptical perfectly. Because it involves opportunities that require discretion, international investments, emerging markets, some currency arbitrage. Nothing illegal, but the kind of sophisticated strategies that work best when not everyone knows about them. Brennan smiled. I'd need to see the $3 million in an account first, verify the funds are real and accessible, and then I could move a portion into this private fund if you're interested. That sounds almost too good to be true, Marcus said carefully. I understand the skepticism, but remember, I was where you are once. Khalid helped me, and I built something real from that help. Now I want to pay that forward by helping you grow Lily's success into something even bigger. Brennan's sincerity seemed absolute. Tell you what, why don't you think about it? Do your due diligence. Check my references. Look at my track record. I'm confident you'll see I'm legitimate. They agreed to consider it, and scheduled a follow-up meeting for 2 weeks later. Outside, in the parking garage, Lily turned to Marcus with wide eyes. Did we just watch someone try to steal 3 million fake dollars? Yeah, Marcus said grimly. We did. But proving it legally was another matter entirely. Layla's legal team reviewed everything, but Brennan had been careful. He hadn't explicitly promised anything illegal. Hadn't technically committed fraud yet. The private investment fund could theoretically be legitimate, even if it almost certainly wasn't. We need him to make the actual attempt, Layla explained during a conference call. Once he tries to move the money into this private fund, once there's actual fraud being committed, we can prosecute. But we need the $3 million to be real, or at least appear real, to make the case solid. I can't put up $3 million I don't have, Marcus said. We can. Al-Rashid Development Corporation will transfer the money into an account in Lily's name. It will be real money in a real account. When Brennan tries to move it, tries to steal it, we document everything and press charges. Marcus felt queasy. What if something goes wrong? What if he actually manages to steal it? The account will have safeguards, multiple authorization requirements, built-in delays, monitoring. If he tries to move the money, we'll know immediately and freeze everything. Layla's voice was steel. This is what we need to do. Torres has been running free for 3 years. It ends now. The plan was set in motion. Lily's name appeared on a brokerage account containing $3 million. Documentation was created showing the patent sale. Everything looked legitimate because, for purposes of the trap, it was legitimate. When Marcus and Lily returned to Brennan's office for the follow-up meeting, Brennan's excitement was palpable. I've drawn up the paperwork for moving $2 million into the private fund, he said. I'd recommend keeping $1 million in traditional investments for liquidity and safety, but the $2 million will generate returns that will change your life, Lily. The paperwork looked professional, dense with legal language and impressive letterhead. Marcus had Layla's legal team review it remotely, and they confirmed what he suspected. Buried in the complex language were provisions that would give Brennan complete control of the funds with no real accountability. I just need you both to sign here, here, and here, Brennan said, sliding the documents across his desk, and we'll need to set up authorization for electronic transfers from your brokerage account. This was the moment. If they signed, if they gave him the account access, Brennan would attempt to steal the money, and they'd have him. Marcus picked up the pen, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. Before we sign, he said carefully, I want to ask you something personal. Brennan's smile never wavered. Of course. What's on your mind? That scar on your wrist, the one under your watch. How'd you get it? For the briefest moment, Brennan's expression froze. It was barely perceptible, a micro-expression that lasted less than a second before the smooth mask returned. But Marcus saw it. Oh, that stupid accident when I was a kid. Fell off my bike into a barbed wire fence. Marcus nodded slowly. According to Layla's file, the real David Brennan had no such scar. Michael Torres had gotten a scar on his right wrist in a prison fight during a brief incarceration in his 20s, before he evolved into a more sophisticated criminal. That's funny, Marcus said quietly, because the real David Brennan didn't have that scar. I've seen photos of him from college. Clean wrists. The room went very still. Brennan's smile finally faltered, confusion replacing charm. What are you talking about? David Brennan died in a car accident in San Diego in 2015. You're Michael Torres. You stole his identity, just like you stole Khalid Al-Rashid's money and trust. Brennan stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. That's ridiculous. I don't know what you're trying to pull, but I'm David Brennan. I have a social security number, a birth certificate, from a dead man whose identity you assumed so you could run from what you did. Marcus stood as well, facing him across the desk. Khalid stopped for me on a highway 8 years ago and changed my life. He stopped for you, or someone pretending to be you 7 years ago. Except you weren't a struggling businessman. You were Michael Torres setting up your next mark. Brennan's face had gone pale, but he rallied, forcing a laugh. This is insane. You're accusing me of being some criminal based on what? A scar? You need to leave my office. The FBI has been contacted, Marcus said, which was true. Layla had involved federal authorities once they had sufficient evidence of identity theft and fraud. They're reviewing everything: the stolen identity, the fraudulent investment fund, the $20 million you took from Khalid Al-Rashid 3 years ago. At the mention of Khalid's name and the specific amount, Brennan's face changed completely. The mask of David Brennan, successful financial consultant, crumbled away. What replaced it was harder, colder, calculating. Who sent you? Torres asked, his voice different now, stripped of the warm friendliness. Layla? Of course it was Layla. She never could let things go. You stole from a man who helped you out of genuine kindness, Marcus said. Did you feel anything when you did it? Any guilt at all? Torres laughed, and it was nothing like Brennan's warm chuckle. Khalid Al-Rashid is a billionaire, $20 million is pocket change to him. He made it back in a year through his other investments. Did I feel guilty? Why should I? The man has more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. It wasn't about the money, Lily said quietly from her seat. It was about trust, about believing in human goodness. Torres looked at her with something like pity. Human goodness is a fairy tale sold to children and idiots. People help each other because it makes them feel superior, or because they expect something in return. Khalid helped people to feel like a saint, to ease his guilt over being obscenely wealthy. I just recognized that and used it. Is that how you justify it? Marcus asked. Everyone's corrupt, so it's okay to be a predator? I'm a realist. The world runs on lies and self-interest. I'm just better at it than most. Torres moved toward the door. Now get out of my office before I call security. Security is already here, Layla said, stepping into the office. Behind her were 2 FBI agents. Michael Torres, you're under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit theft. Torres looked at Layla with something between hatred and grudging respect. You really couldn't let it go. You stole from my father and broke his heart, Layla said coldly. I will never let that go. As the agents handcuffed Torres and read him his rights, he looked back at Marcus. You're good, you know. I actually liked you. Thought we were really friends. A bitter smile. Guess we're both good liars. I'm not a liar, Marcus said. Everything I told you about my life was true. The only lie was pretending I didn't know what you were. Same difference, Torres said as they led him away. The aftermath unfolded over the following months. Torres was indicted on multiple federal charges. The evidence Marcus and Lily had helped gather, combined with what Layla's team had compiled, built an overwhelming case. Torres's assets in Arizona were seized, revealing hidden accounts containing roughly $8 million of the original $20 million he'd stolen. The rest had been spent maintaining his lifestyle and identity as David Brennan. Khalid Al-Rashid flew to Phoenix to thank Marcus personally. They met at the same stretch of Route 60 where they'd first encountered each other 8 years earlier, standing in the desert heat that had brought them together. Khalid looked older, more tired than Marcus remembered, but his eyes still held that gentle kindness. Layla tells me you helped find the man who betrayed my trust. I just did what felt right, Marcus said. You changed my life when you stopped that day. If I could help protect you from someone who exploited your generosity, that seemed like the least I could do. Khalid smiled sadly. When Torres disappeared with my money, it hurt, yes, but the money was not the worst part. The worst part was thinking my instinct to help people had been foolish, that my generosity made me a target for predators. I stopped trusting my judgment about people. And now, Marcus asked, now I see that one bad man does not invalidate all the good ones. You turned out exactly as I hoped. You built a successful business, helped your sister achieve her dreams, and when asked to help someone else, you did so even though it was difficult and dangerous. Khalid placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Torres made me doubt. You reminded me why I helped people in the first place. I'm glad I could do that, Marcus said. But if I'm honest, part of me feels bad. I befriended Torres, or Brennan, whatever we call him, and it wasn't completely fake. Some of those conversations, some of those moments, they felt real, and then I betrayed that to catch him. You did not betray him. He betrayed himself the moment he chose deception over honesty. Khalid looked out at the desert, shimmering in the afternoon heat. Do you know what I learned building my business? Trust is not about never being betrayed. Trust is about choosing to believe in people's potential goodness, even knowing some will disappoint you. Because the alternative, living with suspicion and cynicism, that is not really living at all. They stood together in the heat, 2 men connected by chance and kindness, watching the highway where their story began. What will you do now? Marcus asked. Continue as I have. Help people when I can. Maybe be a little more careful, but not so careful that I stop seeing opportunities to make a difference. Khalid smiled. And you? What's next for Marcus Chen? My second shop opens next month. Lily graduates in the spring. Sarah, my girlfriend, we're talking about moving in together. Marcus paused. And I'm going to start putting aside some money, so that someday, when I see someone broken down on the side of the road, I can be the person who stops. Khalid's smile widened. Then I have invested well. The greatest return is not money returned, but kindness multiplied. They shook hands, and Khalid drove away in a different but equally impressive car. Marcus stood there a moment longer, thinking about trust and deception, about the risks of believing in people, and the greater risk of not believing at all. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Did you hear? Torres pleaded guilty to all charges. 22 years. Marcus typed back, good, justice served. But as he climbed into his truck and headed back to Apache Junction, he thought about Torres's words in that office, the bitter certainty that everyone was corrupt, that kindness was just manipulation with better PR. Torres had been intelligent, charismatic, skilled. In another life, with different choices, he could have been genuinely successful, could have built something real instead of stealing from others. What made someone choose the path Torres had chosen? Was it damage from his past, lack of empathy, or just cold calculation that crime paid better than honest work? Marcus would never know, and maybe it didn't matter. People made choices, and choices had consequences. A year later, Chen's auto repair had 2 locations and was thriving. Lily graduated and accepted a position at a research hospital in Boston. Sarah moved into Marcus's house, and they started planning a wedding. Life was good, stable, full of the kind of mundane happiness that Marcus had once thought impossible. He kept Khalid's business card in his wallet, though he rarely needed to call. They exchanged emails occasionally, updates on their lives, Khalid sharing photos of his grandchildren, Marcus sending pictures of the new shop. The relationship had evolved into something like friendship, built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of second chances. One evening, Marcus was closing up the original shop when a young woman pulled into the parking lot in a smoking Honda Civic. She couldn't have been more than 20, and she looked exhausted and worried. "I know you're closed," she said apologetically, "but my car started making this awful noise, and I don't have much money, and I don't know what to do." Marcus looked at her, saw the fear and stress in her eyes, and remembered being 23 and stranded on Route 60 with no money and no hope. "Let me take a look," he said. "Free diagnostic. We'll figure something out." The problem was the water pump, a $200 repair including parts and labor. The woman nearly cried when Marcus told her, "I don't have that right now. I just moved here for school, and everything's been more expensive than I planned. Can I pay you in installments?" Marcus thought about Khalid stopping in the desert, about kindness multiplied rather than money returned. "Tell you what," he said, "I'll fix it for free, but I need you to promise me something." "Anything," she said desperately. "Someday, when you're in a position to help someone who's struggling, you do it. You pay this forward. Deal?" She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Deal. Thank you. Thank you so much." As Marcus worked on her car that evening, past closing time, not charging her a cent, he thought about the ripples of kindness spreading out from that day on Route 60. Khalid had helped him. He was helping this young woman. Someday, she might help someone else. And maybe, in some small way, that was how the world became a little less like the bitter, cynical place Torres believed it to be. The water pump took 2 hours to replace. When Marcus finished, the young woman tried to pay him something, anything, but he refused. "Just remember your promise," he said. "Pay it forward when you can." She drove away into the Phoenix night, her Civic running smoothly, and Marcus locked up his shop. His phone showed a text from Sarah, asking when he'd be home. Another from Lily sharing exciting news about her research. Another from the landlord of his second location, saying business was great and asking if Marcus had considered a third shop. Life was built from these small moments, Marcus thought. Choices to help or hurt, to be honest or deceptive, to believe in people's goodness or their corruption. Torres had chosen one path and ended up in prison, his life built on lies collapsing around him. Khalid had chosen another and built a legacy of generosity that continued to multiply long after the initial act. And Marcus had been given a choice 8 years ago when Khalid stopped for a stranger in the desert. He could have taken that money and done nothing with it, or misused it, or forgotten the lesson that came with it. Instead, he'd chosen to build something real, something good, something worth passing on. As he drove home through the quiet streets of Apache Junction, past the shop his father had dreamed of owning, toward the house where Sarah waited, and the life they were building together, Marcus understood something fundamental. The Arab billionaire who had helped a young mechanic all those years ago hadn't just given money. He'd given permission to believe that the world could be better, that people could be good, that kindness mattered even when it seemed foolish. Torres had tried to prove that belief was naive. In the end, he'd only proven that it was necessary, because the alternative, living in Torres's world of cynicism and manipulation, wasn't really living at all. It was just surviving, taking from others, building nothing that would last beyond your next con. Marcus chose differently. He chose to believe in the kind of world where billionaires stop for strangers, where mechanics fix cars for free, where trust given and trust earned create something more valuable than money, a life worth living, a legacy worth leaving, and a kindness worth multiplying. The desert stars shone bright above Phoenix that night, the same stars that had witnessed a chance meeting on Route 60 8 years before. And somewhere in that vast darkness, the ripples of kindness continued spreading outward, touching lives in ways that could never be fully measured, but would always matter. That was the real story, not about a con artist caught or justice served, though those things mattered too. The real story was about a choice everyone faces: what kind of person to be in a world that offers endless opportunities for both cruelty and compassion. Marcus Chen, the young mechanic who had once been stranded and afraid, who had been helped by an unexpected stranger, who had built a life from that kindness and learned to give it back. He had chosen compassion, and in the end, that choice made all the difference. "You're the Endery. It's just been a rough few months. No apology necessary. I understand struggling more than you might think." Khalid gazed out at the desert. "I came to America 30 years ago with very little. I worked in gas stations, restaurants, anywhere that would hire someone with broken English and big dreams. People were not always kind. Some saw my appearance, my accent, and assumed things about me." "What changed?" Marcus asked. "I learned that opportunity favors the prepared. I saved every dollar, educated myself, and eventually started a small import business. It grew. I made good decisions and lucky investments. Now I develop real estate, but I try never to forget where I came from." He turned to Marcus with that warm smile. "Which is why I stopped today. We never know when we might be the person who changes someone's life with a small act of kindness." The tow truck arrived exactly when promised. As Marcus climbed out of the Rolls-Royce, Khalid handed him a business card. It was heavy stock, embossed with gold lettering: Khalid Al-Rashid, Al-Rashid Development Corporation, with a Phoenix address and phone number. "The tow will take your truck wherever you need," Khalid said. "But there is one more thing." He pulled out his wallet and extracted a check, already filled out. He handed it to Marcus. Marcus looked at it and felt his breath catch. $10,000, made out to Marcus Chen. He tried to hand it back, his hands shaking. "I can't accept this. This is too much. I don't even know you." Khalid gently pushed the check back toward him. "You told me about your sister's college tuition. $8,000, yes? This gives you a little extra for unexpected expenses. Please take it. Consider it an investment in the future, in a young man who clearly works hard and cares for his family." "Why?" Marcus's voice cracked. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most. Because your father would want his daughter to go to college. Because kindness is never wasted, even if we don't see the results immediately." Khalid placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Use it well. Make your father proud. And perhaps someday, when you are able, help someone else who needs it." Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. "I don't know how to thank you. Live a good life. That is thanks enough." Khalid started toward his car, then turned back. "And Marcus, keep my card. If you ever need anything, or if your business requires assistance, please call. I have many properties that need good mechanics for maintenance." They shook hands, and then Khalid drove away, the Rolls-Royce disappearing into the shimmering heat like a mirage. Marcus stood there holding the check, barely believing what had just happened. The tow truck driver, a weathered man named Jim, who Marcus recognized from town, whistled low when he saw the check. "That must have been one hell of a conversation," Jim said. "Yeah," Marcus replied, still stunned. "I think it was." The $10,000 changed everything. Lily cried when Marcus told her she could accept ASU's offer, and for the first time in 2 years, Marcus felt like he could breathe. He paid off the most pressing debts, fixed his truck's transmission, and used the remainder to upgrade some equipment in his shop. Word somehow spread about his encounter with the generous Arab businessman, and perhaps because people love a feel-good story, customers started coming, not floods of them, but steady, enough to build a reputation, enough to survive. Marcus called the number on Khalid's business card once, about 3 months after their meeting, to thank him again and update him on how the money had helped. A secretary answered and told him Mr. Al-Rashid was traveling in Dubai but would receive the message. Khalid called back 2 days later, delighted to hear things were going well, and true to his word, sent some business Marcus's way. A few of his property managers needed mechanics for their fleets, and suddenly Chen's auto repair had its first commercial contracts. Years passed. Lily thrived at ASU, graduating with honors in biomedical engineering. She got accepted to graduate school, this time with a full scholarship. Marcus's shop grew into something real, a legitimate business with 3 employees and a reputation for honest work at fair prices. He moved into a small house, nothing fancy, but his own. He even started dating again, a teacher named Sarah who thought his grease-stained hands were charming. By 2023, 8 years after that day on Route 60, Marcus had largely stopped thinking about Khalid Al-Rashid, though the man's kindness had shaped everything that followed. The business card remained in Marcus's wallet, a talisman of sorts, but he hadn't needed to call in years. Life was stable, even good. That changed on a Tuesday afternoon in October, when a woman walked into Chen's auto repair carrying herself with the kind of authority that made everyone snap to attention. She was perhaps 40, wearing a sharp business suit and expensive sunglasses pushed up into her dark hair. Two men in casual but clearly high-end clothing flanked her, and Marcus recognized the bearing of security or bodyguards. "Marcus Chen?" she asked, her accent British but with Middle Eastern undertones. "That's me. How can I help you?" She extended her hand. "My name is Layla Al-Rashid. I believe you know my father, Khalid Al-Rashid." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Not from fear, but from sudden concern. "Is he all right? Did something happen?" Layla's expression softened slightly. "He's fine, physically, but I need to speak with you about him. Is there somewhere private we can talk?" They went to Marcus's small office, barely big enough for a desk and two chairs. Layla sat gracefully, studying him with intelligent dark eyes that reminded him of Khalid's, though hers held a hardness her father's never had. "My father is a generous man," she began, "perhaps too generous. He has always believed in helping people, in second chances, in the goodness of human nature. For the most part, this has served him well, but lately we've become concerned that his generosity is being exploited. I'm not sure I understand what this has to do with me," Marcus said carefully. 3 years ago, my father invested $20 million in a development project with a business partner he trusted completely, a man who came to him with a compelling story, who seemed genuine, who my father believed in. Layla's jaw tightened. That man was running an elaborate fraud. He disappeared with the money, leaving my father's company facing serious financial difficulties. We recovered some of the funds, but the damage went beyond money. It broke something in my father. He stopped trusting his own judgment. Marcus felt a chill. "That's terrible, but I still don't understand. We're trying to find the man who did this. His name is Michael Torres, though he's used at least 6 different aliases. He's good at disappearing, good at creating new identities." Layla pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Marcus. The screen showed a photograph of a man in his 40s, handsome in a generic way, with dark hair and a forgettable face. Marcus had never seen him before. He shook his head. Layla swiped to another photo. "This is Torres 3 years ago, before the fraud. Same man, but with different styling." Then another photo. "This is from 5 years before that. In this one, Torres looked younger, slightly different features, but something in the eyes remained constant." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, "but I don't recognize him. Has he been in Phoenix?" "We believe so. We've been tracking his movements, and several leads suggest he's established himself somewhere in Arizona under a new identity." Layla leaned forward. "Here's why I'm here, Mr. Chen. My father has helped many people over the years. He has a pattern of being generous to those he meets randomly, especially if they're struggling. Like you, 8 years ago on Route 60. Marcus nodded slowly. "That changed my life. I'll never forget what he did." "I know. We've kept loose track of his beneficiaries, not out of suspicion, but because my father likes to know how people are doing. In your case, the investment paid off beautifully. You built a successful business, helped your sister through school, gave back to your community. You're exactly the kind of success story my father hopes for when he helps someone. But you think Torres might have been one of the others?" Marcus guessed. "We think Torres specifically sought out my father. We think he researched him, learned about his patterns of generosity, and engineered a meeting designed to trigger my father's instincts to help. And it worked. My father met him, believed his story, and eventually brought him into the business as a partner." Layla pulled up another document on her tablet. "We've identified 17 people my father helped significantly over the past 12 years. 13 of them have been verified as genuine. 1 is you. 3 others we haven't been able to fully confirm, and we think one of them might be Torres, under a false identity. One of those 3 lives in Arizona." She showed Marcus a file. The man's name was listed as David Brennan, age 41, currently residing in Scottsdale. The photo showed a man with lighter hair, glasses, and a beard, but the bone structure looked similar to Torres. There was something in the eyes, a calculation that Marcus found unsettling. "David Brennan owns a successful investment consulting firm in Scottsdale," Layla continued. "According to records, he met my father 7 years ago when Brennan's car broke down near Sedona. My father helped him, gave him money to get back on his feet. Brennan supposedly turned that help into a thriving business. Sound familiar?" "Similar to my story," Marcus admitted. "But that doesn't mean he's the same person as Torres." "No, it doesn't, which is why we need proof. The other 2 suspects are being investigated by our team elsewhere, but Brennan concerns us most because of the Arizona connection and the timeline." Layla's expression hardened. "If he is Torres, he's very good. New identity, new life, and he's kept distance from my father, which suggests he knows we're looking." "What do you want from me?" Marcus asked. "We need someone my father's other beneficiaries would trust, someone who could approach Brennan naturally without raising suspicion, someone who understands what it's like to be helped by Khalid Al-Rashid." Layla met his eyes. "We want you to meet David Brennan, get to know him, and help us determine if he's really who he claims to be." Marcus sat back, his mind racing. "You want me to spy on him? We want you to verify his identity. If he's genuine, wonderful. My father will be glad to know another success story. But if he's Torres, we need evidence that will hold up in court. The man destroyed my father's faith in humanity, Mr. Chen. He needs to face justice. Why not just have the police investigate? We have private investigators, and we've shared what we know with law enforcement. But Torres is clever. Everything about David Brennan's identity checks out on paper. Social security number, tax records, business licenses, all of it. Either Brennan is real, or Torres has created the perfect false identity. We need someone to get close, to find the cracks that paper trails don't show." Marcus thought about the man who had stopped on a desert highway 8 years ago, who had given a struggling mechanic hope when he had none. He thought about what it would feel like to have that generosity thrown back in your face by someone who only saw you as a mark. "If I do this," Marcus said slowly, "and if Brennan is Torres, what happens? We prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. We recover whatever money remains, and my father gets some measure of peace, knowing the man who betrayed him is held accountable. And if Brennan is just Brennan, if he's a legitimate guy your father helped who made good, then we thank you for your time. Apologize for the intrusion, and my father gains back a little faith that his kindness still means something." Layla's expression softened. "I know this is asking a lot, but you're the only person in Arizona who has the background to do this naturally. You're a businessman, someone who could credibly reach out to another of my father's beneficiaries for networking or advice." Marcus looked at the photo of David Brennan again. There was something about the eyes, a flatness that didn't match the smile. Or maybe Marcus was just seeing what Layla wanted him to see. "I need to think about it," he said. "Of course, but Mr. Chen, please think quickly. We believe Torres, if that's who Brennan is, may be planning to disappear again. He's liquidating assets, slowly and carefully, but our analysts have noticed patterns. We may only have a few weeks before he vanishes with whatever he's accumulated here." Layla stood, leaving a thick folder on Marcus's desk. "Everything we know about Brennan is in there. Contact information, business details, even the story he tells about how my father helped him. Read it and call me." She handed him a card. "My father doesn't know about this meeting. He's become fragile about the whole situation, and I don't want to give him false hope. But if we can do this, if we can prove Torres's identity and bring him to justice, it might heal something that's been broken in my father for too long." After Layla and her security left, Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at the folder. Part of him wanted to throw it away, to stay out of whatever complicated mess the Al-Rashid family had gotten tangled in. He had a good life now, stable and peaceful. Getting involved in tracking down a potential con artist seemed like asking for trouble. But another part of him, the part that still carried Khalid's business card in his wallet after 8 years, couldn't forget the kindness of a man who had stopped for a stranger in the desert. If someone had really exploited that kindness, used it as a weapon, then maybe Marcus owed it to Khalid to help set things right. He opened the folder and began to read. "Khalid Al-Rashid's David Brennan's office occupied the 20th floor of a gleaming tower in downtown Scottsdale, all glass and steel, with views of Camelback Mountain. Brennan Financial Consulting specialized in helping high-net-worth individuals manage investments and plan estates. Exactly the kind of business that could be legitimate, or could be an elaborate front for someone like Torres." Marcus had called 3 days after Layla's visit, using the backstory they'd crafted together. He was Marcus Chen, owner of a successful auto repair business looking to diversify his investments, and he'd heard through mutual connections that Brennan had also been helped by Khalid Al-Rashid years ago. Could they meet for coffee and compare notes about building businesses after receiving such extraordinary generosity? Brennan had agreed immediately, his voice warm and enthusiastic over the phone. "It's so rare to meet someone else who experienced Khalid's kindness," he'd said. "I'd love to share stories." Now, Marcus sat in Brennan's reception area, noting the expensive but tasteful artwork on the walls, the receptionist's designer clothes, the overall impression of success without ostentation. If this was a front, it was a very good one. "Mr. Chen?" the receptionist smiled. "Mr. Brennan will see you now." David Brennan's office was corner-facing with floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with afternoon light. The man himself rose from behind a massive desk, extending his hand with a practiced smile. He was handsome in person, fit and well-groomed, with sandy hair going silver at the temples and wire-rimmed glasses that gave him an air of professorial wisdom. Nothing about him screamed con artist. "Marcus, please come in. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water?" "Coffee would be great, thanks." They settled into leather chairs by the window, coffee served in expensive porcelain cups by the receptionist. Brennan radiated easy charm The kind of personality that made you want to trust him immediately. Marcus reminded himself that's exactly what would make someone like Torres successful. So, Brennan said, "Tell me about your encounter with Khalid. When did you meet him?" Marcus had prepared for this, sticking as close to the truth as possible. He recounted the story of his breakdown on Route 60, Khalid's generosity, the check that changed his life. As he spoke, he watched Brennan carefully for any sign of recognition or deception. Brennan listened with apparent genuine interest, nodding at all the right moments. "That's remarkably similar to my experience," he said when Marcus finished. "I was driving back from Sedona 7 years ago, had just finalized my divorce, and my car died on Highway 17. Khalid stopped and helped me. We talked for over an hour waiting for the tow truck. I told him about my plans to start a consulting business, how the divorce had wiped me out financially. And he just believed in me, gave me $15,000 and told me to build something good." "Did you keep in touch with him?" Marcus asked casually. "For the first couple years, yes. Holiday cards, occasional calls to update him on how the business was growing, but the last few years less so. I think he appreciated knowing his investment paid off. But he didn't want constant gratitude. He's a humble man, considering his wealth." "He really is," Marcus agreed. "Have you met any of his other beneficiaries?" Something flickered across Brennan's face, too quick to identify. "No. Actually, you're the first. I always wondered if he made a habit of helping people, or if I was just lucky." They talked for another 30 minutes about business, investments, the challenges of running a company. Brennan was knowledgeable and engaging, offering solid advice that suggested real expertise. Either he was legitimately successful, or he'd done his homework incredibly well. As Marcus prepared to leave, Brennan walked him to the door. "This was great, Marcus. We should do it again. Maybe grab dinner next week. I'd love to hear more about the auto repair business, and I have some investment ideas that might interest you." "I'd like that," Marcus said, shaking his hand. As their hands met, Marcus noticed something, a small scar on Brennan's right wrist, barely visible under his watch. In the photos Layla had shown him of Torres, there had been no such scar. "You okay?" Brennan asked, noticing Marcus's hesitation. "Yeah, sorry. Just remembered something I need to do back at the shop." Marcus smiled. "I'll call you about dinner." Outside, in his truck, Marcus sat for a moment processing the meeting. His instincts said Brennan was genuine. Everything about him seemed authentic, from his office to his knowledge to his manner. But instincts could be wrong, and a good con artist would be skilled at seeming authentic. He pulled out his phone and called Layla. "I met with Brennan, and he seems legitimate. His story matches what's in your file. His office and business look real, and he comes across as genuinely grateful to your father. There's nothing obviously suspicious." "But," Layla pressed. "But nothing. That's the thing. If he's Torres, he's doing an incredible job hiding it. What do you want me to do next?" "Get closer. Accept his dinner invitation. Let him think you're interested in his investment services. People reveal themselves over time, especially when they think they have something to gain." Marcus agreed, but as he drove back to Apache Junction, doubt gnawed at him. Was he looking for a con artist who didn't exist, seeing conspiracy where there was only coincidence, or was he being charmed by someone skilled at deception? Over the following weeks, Marcus and Brennan met several times. Dinner at a steakhouse where Brennan insisted on paying and shared stories about his ex-wife that rang true in their mundane details. A Suns game where Brennan proved to be a genuine fan with season tickets. A weekend golf outing where Brennan's swing was decent, but not great, suggesting he hadn't bought his way into country club expertise. Marcus found himself actually liking the man. Brennan was funny, self-deprecating about his failures, and modest about his successes. He asked about Marcus's sister without prompting, remembered details from previous conversations, and showed real interest in Chen's auto repair. When Marcus mentioned he was thinking about opening a second location, Brennan offered to help run the numbers. "No charge. That's what Khalid did for me," Brennan said over drinks after the golf game. "He didn't just give me money. He gave me belief that I could succeed. The least I can do is pay that forward." Marcus reported all of this to Layla, who remained convinced that Brennan was Torres, despite the lack of hard evidence. "He's too perfect," she insisted. "Real people have rough edges. Everything about his story is too clean. Or maybe he's just a decent guy who got lucky," Marcus argued. "Maybe not everyone your father helped is hiding something. Then prove it. Find something that definitively establishes his identity. Birth certificate, childhood records, someone who knew him before 7 years ago. If he's real, that evidence exists." So Marcus pushed a little harder, asking more personal questions during their next dinner. Brennan answered easily. He grew up in Tucson, attended University of Arizona, worked for several financial firms in California before the divorce brought him back to Arizona. He had a younger brother in Denver, Parents who retired to Florida. College friends he'd lost touch with. You're lucky you're close with your sister, Brennan said. I should call my brother more. We drifted apart, you know how it is. Life gets busy. Why'd you come back to Arizona after the divorce? Marcus asked. Needed a fresh start, somewhere familiar but not too familiar. California had too many memories. Tucson was where I grew up. Too many people who knew me then. Scottsdale felt like neutral territory where I could rebuild without everyone knowing my story. Brennan swirled his wine. Does that make sense? It did make sense. Everything always made sense with Brennan, which was either perfectly normal or perfectly suspicious depending on your perspective. Marcus was beginning to think Layla was wrong, that Brennan was exactly who he claimed to be, when something unexpected happened. They were at Brennan's house in Paradise Valley, a tasteful mid-century modern that Brennan had bought 2 years ago. Marcus had been invited for a barbecue, and they were in the kitchen preparing steaks when Marcus noticed a photograph on the refrigerator. It showed Brennan with an older couple, clearly his parents, at what looked like a beach sunset. That's from last year in Florida, Brennan said, noticing Marcus's interest. My parents' 40th anniversary. They have a condo in Naples now. Marcus studied the photo. The couple looked genuinely related to Brennan. Same bone structure in the father, same smile in the mother. But something about the photo bothered him, though he couldn't articulate what. The lighting seemed off somehow, or maybe the proportions. He was a mechanic, not a photographer, so he dismissed the feeling. Later that evening, after too much wine and good conversation, Marcus used Brennan's bathroom. He wasn't snooping, not intentionally, but his eye caught on the medicine cabinet left slightly ajar. Inside were the usual items: shaving cream, pain relievers, antacids, and a prescription bottle. Marcus knew he shouldn't look. It was an invasion of privacy. But Layla's voice echoed in his head about finding definitive proof. So he carefully opened the cabinet and read the label. The prescription was for blood pressure medication, prescribed to David Michael Brennan, birth date listed as March 14th, 1982. Marcus pulled out his phone and quickly photographed the label before closing the cabinet and flushing the toilet to maintain the illusion of normalcy. When he returned to the living room, Brennan was queuing up a movie, oblivious to Marcus's racing heart. That night, Marcus sent the photo to Layla with a message. Prescription bottle in his house. Name and birth date match your file for Brennan. Isn't this proof he's legitimate? Layla's response came 30 minutes later. Or proof that Torres is good at stealing identities. Real David Brennan could have existed, and Torres assumed his life. Check if the birth date matches anything in Torres's background. Marcus felt sick. He was getting in too deep, investigating someone who had been nothing but kind to him. If Brennan was innocent, what Marcus was doing was a betrayal of friendship. But if Brennan was Torres, then everything was a lie anyway. The next morning, Marcus called a contact he'd made through his business, a private investigator named Janet Reeves, who did background checks for car dealerships worried about fraud. He explained the situation in vague terms, a friend trying to verify someone's identity for business purposes, and asked if she could look into David Brennan's history. You want me to find proof he is who he says he is? Janet asked. Yeah, birth certificate, school records, anything that establishes his identity before, say, 8 years ago. That's actually harder than you'd think. If someone's not trying to hide, they don't leave much of a paper trail for ordinary life. But I'll see what I can find. Give me a week. Marcus tried to maintain normalcy while waiting, but he felt the weight of deception every time Brennan texted or called. When Brennan invited him to a charity golf tournament the following weekend, Marcus almost declined but forced himself to accept. If Brennan was Torres, staying close was necessary. If Brennan was innocent, pulling away suddenly would be cruel and suspicious. The charity event was at a prestigious course in Paradise Valley, and Brennan introduced Marcus to several wealthy business people, potential clients for both their companies. Brennan was in his element, charming and professional, working the crowd with practiced ease. Marcus watched him interact with an older couple, matching their energy, asking about their grandchildren, making them laugh. If this was performance, it was Oscar-worthy. On the 7th hole, while their partners were teeing off, Brennan turned to Marcus with an unusually serious expression. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Sure. You've been different the last week or two. More distant, like you're analyzing everything I say. Did I do something wrong? Marcus's mind raced. No, man. I'm sorry. Just been stressed about the second shop location. Lot of decisions to make. Brennan studied him for a long moment. Okay, but if there's something else, you can tell me. I value our friendship, Marcus. You're one of the few people who understands what Khalid's generosity meant. The genuine concern in Brennan's voice made Marcus feel like a complete bastard. I appreciate that. Really, I'm good. Just overthinking business stuff like always. But Brennan's question lingered. Had Marcus been too obvious in his surveillance? Had he tipped his hand? Or was Brennan genuinely just a perceptive friend noticing Marcus's stress? Janet called 3 days later. "I found some interesting stuff on your David Brennan." Marcus's heart pounded. "What kind of stuff?" "Well, he exists. That's for sure. Social Security number issued in Arizona in 1982. Birth certificate on file in Tucson. School records from elementary through high school. University of Arizona confirmed his graduation in 2004 with a degree in finance. Everything checks out timeline-wise.